Part 6. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 51. Then when faced with such a situation, how can you do it? The guild staff who were monitoring Ximen, as well as the adventurers from the Ganesha Familia who were famous for their bravery, had now lost all their strength and fell limply to the ground. In the large room they were guarding, the cages originally used to imprison monsters were all empty. Not long ago, the goddess of beauty had released all the monsters. Freya has no fighting ability. As long as she is in the lower world, she is just a powerless god. However, she possesses an unusual degree of beauty. No, she is the epitome of beauty. A force that cannot be controlled by reason. Not even humans or demi-humans, not even the gods, can withstand this overwhelming power of dominance. As long as she has the will, she can drive anyone into the abyss of selflessness. This time she used this power in a somewhat unfair direction. She makes her opponents unconscious, literally unable to stand, and turning them into soft bones regardless of gender. Charmed them as long as she uses something close to a sneak attack, she can also pull off this trick. The purpose of doing this is very simple, just for fun. This somewhat bored goddess wants to see what the child she likes can do. The pure and flawless, figure that makes me pity you, can I see your frost blooming this time? Yayu and Hestia walked around the arena, but unfortunately they still didn't find 11 You must have gone back, right? Well, Yayu, let's go inside and watch the show. Hestia said this, narrowing her eyes and encouraging Yayu. Want to go see it? Yayu hesitated slightly, although he really couldn't stand the lively atmosphere, but if Hestia was looking forward to it so much, then go ahead. Just when Yayu was thinking this, there was a sound that tickled his ears. Not the still yet cooling commotion of the festival, but another urgent shrill sound. Scream. When this soliloquy came from Yayu's mouth. Immediately afterwards, a deafening sound echoed all around. There are monsters As if frozen, the peaceful and noisy avenue suddenly became silent. Then, Yayu saw it. The road leading here from the arena. Accompanied by the sound of kicking stone bricks, a monster with pure white fur was rushing towards the side in a rough manner. The monster that seemed to be searching for something roared the moment it saw Hestia, and then stepped over with a fierce step. The moment that step was taken, the crowd formed a wall and fled in all directions, screaming. Yeah, Yayu. Hestia, who felt something keenly, shouted Yayu's name in such horror. Yayu squeezed the girl's hand tightly, and then quickly let go. Stay away from me. He said this extremely calmly. Although he was curious about why the monster appeared here and what happened, he had no time to grasp the situation now. The most important thing now is to deal with this monster before the casualties increase. Although it looks like a terrifying monster, it is actually not much different from the Minotaur when we first encountered it. In other words, a monster like this is really too weak. No, I don't want to leave Yayu. But what made Yayu a little bit dumbfounded was that Hestia not only didn't leave, but actually threw herself on him. Don't make trouble, okay? I asked you to stay away from me just because I'm afraid that the frost will hurt you in a moment. After such a long time, Yayu also roughly understood the characteristics of the magic he mastered. He was not able to control frost as Hestia said. In fact, the moment his magic was released, he could not distinguish between friend and foe. It's just that he himself seems to be immune to the threat of such frost, and he can also help others eliminate this threat. But all he could do was to make amends afterwards. At the moment when the magic was released, the damage was actually endured. Although it was only for that moment, Yayu didn't want Hestia to feel that kind of pain. The person who felt this painful feeling the most was Ace Wallenstein. Yayu is still a little apologetic to the girl he accidentally hurt. The moment Yayu hesitated, the orangutan-like monster silverback ape grabbed Yayu and Hestia with one palm. "Let's run first." Giving up the plan to attack, Yayu hugged Hestia and turned around and ran with the crowd. Because it is in the street, the huge silverback has difficulty moving, so it can be easily thrown away through some alleys. The streets were already in serious chaos. The crowd around them screamed and fled around indiscriminately. People scurried, scrambled, and fled out of the avenue in a hurry. Although he got into the alley, the silverback seemed to have no intention of giving up, and aimed directly at Hestia to catch up again. "Why are they only chasing us? Is there something about us that attracts them?" Yayu was talking to himself, and when he looked down, Hestia was still smiling. "You can still laugh at times like this, my lord god. Don't you think it's very romantic, Yayu? This kind of plot is about a brave man protecting the goddess from the hands of monsters." Hestia blinked with stars and said with a longing look on her face, "Why did you rush back suddenly? You almost hurt Hestia. It's not like you don't know the characteristics of my magic. You will get frostbite. It doesn't matter, because it's Yayu's frost. Even if you get cold, you will only feel warm." In response to Yayu's complaint, Hestia gently shook her head and showed a gentle smile. "Don't ever think that you will hurt the people around you. Yayu is such a gentle person, even if he is surrounded by ice, he will not make people feel afraid or strange at all. Yayu's frost is also gentle. Such power, such frost is also gentle?" Hestia's words made Yayu slightly stunned and couldn't help but fall into thinking. At this moment, the monster's roar sounded again. "So quickly, are you already catching up?" The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 52. Lord Ganesha, Lord Ganesha. It's not good, something bad is going to happen. In a corner of the arena where the heat wave hit, there was action. The monster festival is still going on at this moment. The animal trainer jumped on the back of the little dragon waving its long neck like a horse racing, and people's excitement was about to reach its climax. "To tell you the truth, I am none other than Ganesha." "No, I know that. No need to introduce yourself now." The uppermost auditorium of the arena. Ganesha, who was watching the ceremony from a position with a clear view of the entire arena, struck a strange pose when he saw the members rushing in, as if to show off his elephant mask. The members burst into tears at the strange behavior of their main god, and reported the emergency situation. The captured monster escaped. The cage is empty. Hey, isn't that tragic? That's why I can't say it right. The members yelled at Ganesha, who suddenly stopped moving, indicating the urgency of the matter. Including that the guard in the basement was defeated by someone in the guild was also victimized, and judging from the above situation, this commotion should be caused by outside thieves? Ganesha, who listened with a serious expression, asked in a low voice while listening to the entire report. "How many monsters escaped? No, how many monsters were released?" Nine heads. Among them are monsters that even skilled adventurers find difficult to deal with. The calm Ganesha did not waver. He said and shook the elephant mask on his face. A shrill scream came from center field. The trainer who was confronting the dragon at close range opened his palms in front of his opponent as if to say stop. After a low growl came from the monster's throat, it lowered its head to the ground submissively, stretched out its tongue and licked the trainer's hand. The scene immediately burst into cheers. The beautiful animal trainer who led the dragon and raised her hands to the audience received unstinting applause and cheers from the audience. "Okay, urgently hunt down those monsters. And join forces with other familiar clans. Go and ask the gods present to provide assistance. Please wait. No matter what the process is, letting the monster escape is our failure. If we use the power of other forces, It will not only disgrace us, but also allow our opponents to take advantage of it. I am the group leader Ganesha. How can we let the citizens who are supposed to protect us be harmed? Our greatest happiness is the smiles of our children, even if we give up our status and reputation. Oh yes. I'm so sorry. The festival continues. Don't let the spectators who are currently in the arena go out, and don't let them know that the monster has escaped. You must not do anything that causes chaos, okay? I understand. There is one more thing, about the search for the person who released the monster. It doesn't matter, don't worry about it. This person didn't let go of all the captured monsters, which shows that he didn't intend to arbitrarily expand the number of victims. I think this person has another purpose. To attack in the east or in the west, or to disrupt, although it is annoying, but let's do what he wants. We must put the safety of citizens as our top priority. Go for it. Upon hearing Ganesha's order, the members immediately rushed outside. Only 5 minutes had passed since it was confirmed that the monsters had escaped en masse. Under the command of God, the Ganesha Familia took a quick response. The monster escaped. When Ganesha noticed something strange, Ina and others who were waiting near the main entrance of the arena also received this information. It is said that the West team saw the monster escaping from the arena. The Ganesha Familia is also busy dealing with it. What should we do, Ina? Although Ina was stunned for a moment, she immediately switched consciousness and raised her willow eyebrows. With a resolute expression, she said to her friend who was about to burst into tears. Anywhere is fine, feel free to get in touch with any familiar nearby. There are also adventurers. Is it okay to make such arbitrary decisions? I don't know what the higher UPS will say in the future. The guild staff currently present, including Aina, are all grassroots staff. This is because when an accident occurred at Zymen, all the superiors, including the team leader, went there in order to supplement manpower. Colleagues around me also expressed obvious uneasiness about the unauthorized action. It's better than being injured. Besides, God Ganesha also knows to put human life first, so he shouldn't object to us asking for help from other familiar clans. It will be too late until something happens. Yuri right. It would be bad if something irreparable happened. Ina continued to convince her colleagues by pointing out Ganesha's personality of actively assisting in running the monster festival in order to please the citizens. Perhaps because of her sincerity, other guild employees also expressed their approval of Ina after looking at each other. Soon they began to discuss their respective responsibilities and sharing. Sorry, may I ask, what happened? Sudden. A voice spoke to Ina and the others who were huddled together. The moment they looked at the person who made the sound, everyone stopped. I Sai Wallenstein. Listening to the dull voice of her colleague, Ina also looked at the girl in shock. Many skirts that cover half of your soft thighs, and crop tops. Although he was not wearing any armor, the rapier in its scabbard was hanging on his sword belt. Her waist-length blonde hair glistened in the sunlight. The most powerful adventurer among Aurario. The existence that Ina and others dream of now is standing there. The staff member closest to the other party hurriedly explained the whole matter to Ace. She listened intently to what was going on, and turned around as soon as she understood the situation. Loki. Well, I heard everything. It seems it's not time for a date. Well, let's sell a favor to Ganesha. Hearing Loki agree with a grin, the guild staff cheered together. Like them, whose expressions became brighter, Ina was temporarily relieved, but immediately tensed her shoulders nervously. Then, do you know where the monster is wandering? Yes, according to the news, almost all the monsters went towards East Street. East Main Street. Yeah, you, who was looking for an acquaintance just now, turned back there. Maybe that young man stepped into the center of this incident by accident. Messiah, What type of monster escaped? Huh? Well, I remember there were sword-horned deer, trolls, and silverback apes. Her friend's answer made her frown tightly. The floor where the silverback appears is the 11th floor. Sword-horned deer and giant monsters were born in dungeons deeper than the 20th floor. Every kind of monster is not an opponent that you, who is still a rookie, can handle. This will go as you wish. The monster has really appeared, so don't be brave and take your god to take refuge quickly. She looked up at the sky in the direction of East Street. Now Ina can only pray that you, the guy who always makes her angry, is safe. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 53. Yayu and Hestia were walking through the alley, and the movement of the silverback ape was not far away. It seemed that it was also looking for the whereabouts of Yayu and Hestia. Why, it seems to be purposefully tracking your whereabouts, Hestia. After avoiding for a while, Yayu muttered strangely. This accident that looked like an accident didn't seem to be that simple. There seemed to be someone behind the scenes. And that target is Hestia. Forget it for now, although it is a bit unexpected, now is the time to make it work. Hestia on the other side did not have any consciousness of fleeing, but opened the sword box behind her with a look of interest. He always thought that the weapon Hephaestus and Hestia helped him build was a staff, but when Hestia opened the box, Yayu exclaimed in surprise. Lying quietly inside the box was not a staff, but a broad two-handed knight's sword. The whole body is a somewhat dim silvery white, and the sword's body is engraved with runes imprinted with unknown characters. The shape is not eye-catching, but it is unique and makes people feel very comfortable. Why, a sword? Yayu murmured to himself. He didn't know why when he saw this sword, he suddenly felt a strange sense of familiarity. Well, because I accidentally told Hephaestus what Yayu said once, and then she made this sword. What I said? That's right, hasn't Yayu always felt that magic is only for assisting? One's own power is the real power. Hestia said as she looked at the weapons in the box. Maybe this is Hephaestus' intention in creating this weapon. She also feels that you don't have to be a mage. After the words fell, Yayu picked up the weapon in the box without saying a word. Feeling his master, the runes on the sword shone one by one. Yayu, give it a name. I originally wanted to call it Hestia's blade, but I think it's better to ask for your opinion. Name. Yayu muttered to himself, slightly stimulating his strength. The blue light on the long sword flickered more and more, but the sword body showed no sign of being frozen. It can be seen that this is the function of the runes engraved on the sword. These incomprehensible words seem to be some kind of wonderful circuit, which makes good use of Yayu's magic power. Yayu's ability is Frost, so how about calling this sword Frostmourne? Hestia suggested this, and Yayu's whole body trembled slightly, almost falling to the ground. You said, what did you say? Hey, what's wrong, isn't the name Frostmourne a bad name? Seeing Yayu's trembling voice and his strange tone, Hestia tilted her head in confusion. No. I still think it's better to call it Hestia's blade. After all, this weapon is the result of your hard work, Hestia. Yayu, who soon returned to his normal appearance, spoke so gently and gently touched Hestia's head. Kindness. Hestia couldn't help but nodded excitedly when she heard Yayu use this name. The communication between the two people did not last long, and a shadow fell over their heads. The beast, which had been searching in the passage for a long time, finally discovered the traces of Hestia and Yayu, and pursued them. He violently pushed Hestia in front of him away, and immediately the silverback ape's palm fell violently to separate the two of them. Leaf. The call was only halfway out before the girl swallowed it back into her mouth again. Along with the biting cold air, the palm of the silverback ape that was blocking Hestia's sight was completely cut off. It was completely unlike the reaction that someone holding a sword for the first time should have. The knight's long sword, which was difficult to grasp with one hand, was waved lightly by Yayu. The bright white sword light cut off the fallen ape arm in front of Hestia into dozens of pieces. Not a drop of blood flowed out, and the shattered monster limbs exploded into crystal fragments along with the frost in mid-air, and scattered to the ground. The silverback ape, who was completely unaware of what was happening, lost its arm, and its entire huge body lost its balance, and immediately pressed forward. Hestia, who was just under the shadow of the silverback, screamed and immediately tried to escape in a hurry. Halfway through, the girl felt herself falling into a warm embrace. Immediately, with the loud sound of the silverback ape's body hitting the ground, the two hugged each other and rolled out in a somewhat embarrassed manner. "It's so amazing, Yayu, the swordsmanship just now was really beautiful." Yuben was worried about whether the girl in his arms was injured, but after hearing her smiling words, Yayu felt relieved. He doesn't know any swordsmanship, he just subconsciously waved the weapon in his hand. But looking at the results now, it seems to be quite useful. The silverback ape fell to the ground in embarrassment and struggled for a long time before slowly getting up. Although it lost a wrist, it obviously hadn't figured out what happened. The wound sealed by the ice, even there is no pain. Go ahead and kill it. Seeing the monster stand up again, Hestia patted Yayu on the shoulder and spoke with confidence. The long sword in his hand turned over, the runes engraved on the sword glowed with blue light, and the chilling cold air spread uncontrollably. Hestia's breathing was stagnant, and the left and right sides of the alley were covered with a thin layer of frost. Even the monster's silverback hesitated for a moment due to the sudden drop in temperature, but unable to resist the temptation of Hestia, who was so close at hand, it still launched an attack and charge without fear of death. The goddess you long for is right in front of you, you just need. The body gradually became stiff, and the last thing the silver-backed ape saw was the blade of a long sword flashing with blue light falling towards him. Just like smashing a fragile porcelain, traces of cracks spread with the chopped long sword. Still not a trace of blood spread out. The entire huge body of the silverback ape exploded into pieces, turning into crystal clear sky. The fragments were scattered one after another. So beautiful, just like snow. Looking at the back of the man holding the sword in front of her, Hestia couldn't help but feel in a trance. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 54. Frost itself represents elegance and beauty. Even if it is used to kill, it is so beautiful and thrilling. The entire alley was shrouded in pure white, with no other color at all. Yeah, Yayu. Looking at Yayu standing there motionless, Hestia asked with a little worry. It's okay, Yayu, I've killed that guy, but it seems that the crystal is gone. Looking at the broken body of the silverback ape, Hestia said with some pity. Once the monsters in the dungeon die, they will turn into halo-like fragments and disappear. I don't know why. It seems like a part of something has returned to the original body after disappearing. The dungeon is alive, Yayu has always believed in this. As for the dead monsters, in Yayu's opinion, they just returned to the dungeon as their original form, right? As for why he has never encountered monsters in the dungeon, Yayu is basically sure. This dungeon is afraid of me, not as a person, but as a result of the power within me. Where does this power come from? This is like a godlike power. Yayu shook his head amusedly thinking about this. Could it be that he was still the reincarnation of the god of ice and snow? There was a sense of heaviness in his hand. It had not felt like this when he just swung the long sword, but after killing the silverback ape, Yayu suddenly couldn't bear it. What, is your physical fitness so poor that you can't even lift your own weapon? Yayu shook his head in amusement. How could there be such a weak god? But it doesn't seem right, It should be said that all gods are so weak, right? Okay, I'm fine. It's just that this thing is a little too heavy. Turning back to comfort Hestia, who was worried about him, Yayu showed a relaxed smile. It's okay. After all, Yayu is a mage. It's still a bit difficult to use a sword to fight. Sure enough, I should have stopped Hephaestus and let her make a staff at that time. Hestia said this with a somewhat remorseful expression. Hephaestus specifically checked with Hestia before starting the work. Then, for some reason, Hestia made a mistake. I chose to make a long sword instead of a staff. It's okay, I think maybe this is what is truly best for me, right? Looking at the long sword in his hand, Yayu didn't care much. His dependence on weapons is not serious in itself, this weapon is just the icing on the cake for him. Just when he wanted to take Hestia away from here, a burst of joy erupted. It turned out that the residents of the street who were watching the battle between Yayu and the silverback monkey burst into excitement. They no longer hide in their homes, but lean out of their windows and cheer. A corner of the maze street was filled with heat that was as hot as the arena. Although he was surrounded by cheers praising him, Yayu did not show much excitement. Instead, he turned around and made a silent gesture towards the residents. If you want to celebrate, let's wait for a while. God, she is tired. Yayu spoke so softly in a gentle voice, and then the residents noticed that the slender girl had fallen limply into Yayu's arms. Hestia, who had been quite energetic just now, lay a little weakly on top of him. The girl's eyes were weakly closed, and her face became very pale. Thank you, Hestia. Knowing that the other party was working so hard to build weapons for himself, Yayu felt indescribably moved. Until he hugged Hestia's limp body and left the alley, all the residents spontaneously kept quiet, watching Yayu leave with adoration and admiration. Everything is seen quietly by a pair of eyes. When she saw the image of Yayu waving the weapon in her hand to separate the monsters and the crystal clear frost floating in the air, even she, the god of beauty, couldn't help but let out a sigh of admiration. It's really intoxicating, that ugly moment of death and destruction can be so beautiful. Even the former ice and snow goddess Diane couldn't release such beautiful frost, right? It's also frost, but Yayu's frost is even incomparable to Diane, who is a god. So, who are you? How can you, who is so beautiful, be a mere descendant of Norii? Freya said this and shook her head slightly, becoming more and more curious about Yayu's. It really makes people jealous. Hestia can embrace such a beautiful existence and enjoy such intoxicating tenderness. On the roof of a certain house, Freya murmured to herself from a high place with an unobstructed view of the area around Yayu's location. In front of Yintang's sight, there was the figure of Yayu carefully holding Hestia and leaving. It's really, if you look like this, you'll be a little bit unbearable. Freya, the goddess who represents beauty, showed an obsessed posture, twisting her blood-stirring body and clamping her legs tightly. And, it's different from every other time. This is the first time that such a strong possessive desire arises from the bottom of my heart. I really want to use your frost to extinguish the flames all over my body right now. Freya, who showed an infatuation that would make anyone intoxicated, looked at Yayu, who had no time to look around, and ran through the passage to the exit with passionate eyes, narrowing her eyes. Letting her silver hair reflecting the sunlight float, she left the scene. This childish game really makes you laugh, Yayu. Next time we meet, let's play some games that only adults can play together. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 55. The ferocious beast launched an attack on the girl without fear of death, but with just one blow, this invincible monster in the eyes of the people around him was killed instantly. Well, it's over. Yes. Isai let the silver saber make a sharp sound, and then sheathed the sword with a smooth movement. Seeing the giant monster lying on the street with a loud noise, the surrounding citizens cheered for it. Loki, who was standing boredly behind Ace, put his hand on his head and said, "Oh. It's really a bit disappointing. And there doesn't seem to be any serious disaster anywhere. I always feel like I've been tricked." Indeed, Ace agreed with Loki's opinion in her heart. They run around to prevent citizens from being harmed, but once they arrive on the scene, they find that the monster is not harming anyone. They just wandered around the arena a little roughly, as if they were looking for something. It cannot be denied that it does feel like the whole thing is in the palm of someone's hands. Does this solve everything? No. There's only one left. Among the 9 escaped monsters, there was still a silverback ape. If it were Ace, this kind of opponent would be chopped to the ground by her before she could even blink. Then get rid of it early. Loki, who had already lost his motivation, quickly started to move. Ace followed obediently. They learned about the sightings of silverback monkeys from evacuated citizens and came to East Street. Ah! What, it's over already? The avenue seemed lively and lively. There was no fear of monsters, only obvious excitement. Loki approached the crowd forming in front of an alley. Just when he was about to ask what happened, he couldn't help but tremble. "Why, it's so cold. Auntie, where is the monster? What's going on now?" While Loki was curiously asking the residents on one side, Ace Wallenstein walked into the depths of the alley alone. When she was outside, she only felt a slight chill, but the deeper she went, the more the girl could feel the coldness that penetrated the depths of her soul. A faint layer of pure white can still be seen on the walls of the alley, and crystal fragments of frost are still slowly falling down from the sky. "Did you do it?" The girl stretched out her hand to gently catch a piece of ice flower, and murmured to herself. Her thoughts couldn't help but drift back to the day when the two met for the first time. The feeling bloomed in front of her and invaded her body in an instant, almost taking away her soul. It was exactly like the debris falling in front of him now, leaving an unforgettable mark that penetrated straight into his soul. Isai didn't know what was going on with her. It seemed that ever since that meeting, the girl couldn't help but care about him. Maybe I was just slightly dissatisfied. I had paid so much to get this power, as a LV5, but in front of that person, I was completely defeated. The next time you see him, you must tell him everything that is on your mind. You must challenge him. Ace thought this and made up her mind. Soon she will leave to complete the great cause of being promoted to LV6, but before that, the girl wants to compete with Yayu. Ace feels that if she doesn't overcome the frost that has left a shadow in her heart, maybe she will fail in her promotion to LV6, right? Ah, it's even colder in here. I'm just saying that such an unusual temperature must be the fault of that boy. Behind Isai, Loki walked over in a nonchalant manner. Since it's him, it's not surprising that he can get over it easily. Let's go, there's still plenty of time. How about we continue our date? As he spoke, Loki had a disgusting smile on his face like a weird uncle, and he immediately wanted to attack Ace from behind. Naturally, she just missed it. Ace, who easily dodged the dirty hands of her Lord God, did not forget to turn around and give Loki a blow with his hand. "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, didn't I say I wouldn't use violence?" Loki muttered in a low voice, while Ace turned and left the alley. The latter was stunned and quickly followed. Well, it turns out that Ace also wants to continue the date, right? "No, I want to go back to sword practice." "What, why are you practicing swordsmanship again? Didn't I tell you not to be so serious all the time?" Isai and Loki left the alley one after another, leaving only the residents who were still curious to gather together and talk to each other about what happened not long ago. In front of the guest room of the rich mistress, 11ER closed the door and walked out of the room. "It's nothing serious, just overtired." Looking at Yayu, who was standing at the door and still a little worried, 11ER said with a slight smile. "The time is dusk. When he was about to go back to the church directly with Hestia in his arms, he accidentally met Seal, who was watching the monster festival, and followed her advice to send the unconscious Hestia here. After all, the guest rooms in the tavern are much better than the environment under the church. It seems that the idea of buying a house has been moved forward. The commotion at the monster festival has gradually subsided. It is said that the rapid response of various organizations, including the Ganesha Familia and the Guild, kept the damage to a minimum. Not only were there no dead, but no one was injured. It is said that the prisoner who caused the commotion has not yet been found, and no clues have been obtained. The Ganesha Familia and Guild members who were suspected of being attacked by criminals all seemed to be under the spell of a witch and could not remember anything. The incident ended when the prisoner's purpose was unknown. On the second floor of the tavern's private room, Hestia was sleeping quietly in her room, while he was sitting opposite Seal on the wooden corridor as the sun set. "I'm really sorry today. It was only because I forgot to bring my wallet that you were involved in this disaster." It seemed that after hesitating for a long time, 11ER spoke with some embarrassment. "No, this sudden incident is not your fault, 11ER. Yayu shook his head indifferently. 11ER still felt guilty for a long time, but in the end her expression finally became natural and a smile appeared on her lips. Yayu felt relieved when he saw her expression. However, this commotion has also allowed people to see Mr. Yayu's handsome side. 11ER chuckled at Yayu like this and shook her light gray hair. "The dreamlike scenery created by the freezing cold air is really cool, it makes people feel mesmerized." She approached gently, covered it with her hands, and whispered softly in her ears. The girl's breath approaching made Yayu's breathing slightly heavy. Seemingly sensing Yayu's slight loss of composure, 11ER left his side, letting her face turn crimson as the setting sun illuminated her face, and smiled sweetly and coquettishly. "It seems, I still have a chance. Mr. Yayu's heart does not have room for other women besides Miss Riveria." After saying this sentence, which was no different from a confession, it seemed that she was too shy, so 11ER covered her face and hurriedly went down the stairs. I'm going to work. As for Lady Hestia, please ask Mr. Yayu to take care of it." Seeing 11ER running away, Yayu couldn't help but be stunned for a while, then he couldn't help but shook his head and laughed softly. "It's beautiful, 11ER, as delicate as a gardenia." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Shang. Chapter 56. After that, the festival continued smoothly. Although there was a big event like the monster escaping, it didn't seem to dampen the enthusiasm of some people at all. On the contrary, it was because of the monster's escape this time that the reputation of the swordswoman Ace Wallenstein became even more famous. The girl's clean and neat way of killing the monster left a deep impression in the eyes of many people. On the contrary, because Yayu left quickly, not many people knew about it. Although there were some curious people talking about the swordsman who manipulated the frost to defeat the silver-backed ape, they had no idea who that person was. And Hestia, who woke up, also understood why Yayu went to the dungeon every day and couldn't make any money. It must be because Yayu is so powerful that those weak monsters were frozen to pieces together with the crystals, right? Seeing Hestia asking herself this question with wide eyes, Yayu didn't know how to answer for a moment. Should he tell her that he can't touch monsters until now? After scratching his head with a headache, Yayu decided to give it one last try. This time he planned to find a supporter to go to the dungeon with him. If he still couldn't encounter monsters this time, then he would honestly explain the situation to Hestia and ask her if she had the solution. Having said that, it wasn't that he couldn't encounter monsters in the dungeon, but that Yayu had never encountered a monster alone in the dungeon. Monsters usually appear from the walls, but Yayu has never encountered such a thing when he acted alone. But this doesn't mean that he hasn't seen monsters in the dungeon. He often sees other adventurers fighting some monsters. However, grabbing monsters in a dungeon is a very bad thing. Yayu has not encountered any crisis situations in the previous floors, so even if he wants to take action in the name of saving people, there is nothing he can do. As for the adventurers that can be encountered after the 5th level, they become scarce. Adventurers who have reached this level are generally very cautious, and even fellow adventurers will not get too close. Since you never encounter monsters when you act alone, maybe you can successfully encounter monsters with a supporter, right? Yeah, you thought about this and spoke out this proposal in the compartment of the Adventurers Guild. Ina, who was sitting in front of him, frowned slightly and thought for a long time before nodding. The current situation seems to be that there is no explanation for why you can't encounter monsters. It is indeed a good idea to form a support group. As Aina said this, her expression suddenly became serious. But if you form a team of supporters, you can't take risks. At least go down to the 5th floor. Don't you ask to know the areas after the 5th floor. Don't forget that your original mission is to kill one person. The goblins aren't done yet. Don't worry, I'm sensible. Yeah, you nodded and said this, but Aina was not at ease at all. Are you measured? It's amazing how measured you are. With this muttering in her heart, Aina looked at the long sword wrapped in cloth that Yayu carried on his back. Did you get new equipment, but do you really know how to use a sword? Although Yayu has been an adventurer for nearly a month, he seems to have never really fought once, right? And didn't his main god say that he might take the mage route? Why are you carrying a big sword? Weapons suitable for novice adventurers should be rapiers or soft swords. The famous Sword Queen's famous weapon is the rapier in her hand. As for the big sword, it is not a weapon that ordinary people can play well. Even people who have used swords for a long time may not be able to use it well, let alone Yayu, who is a complete rookie in the eyes of Ina. I said, the bigger the weapon, the better. At your current stage, a big sword is not suitable for you at all. Carrying this weapon on your back is a burden, let alone in a dangerous dungeon. When you meet like this, even if the monster wants to pull out its weapon and fight, it probably won't be possible. The big sword wrapped tightly in cloth on the back does look very eye-catching, but it is really impractical. A weapon naturally needs to be held in the hand and can be chopped at any time to be considered a good weapon. A flashy thing like a big sword is not suitable for newcomers to use at all. Ina is still the same as before, worrying about this and that. Seeing Aina's appearance, Yayu shook his head in amusement. Why do you mean I'm worried about this or that? You can't listen to what others say. What I say is very important and fatal to adventurers. I know, Ina is thinking about my safety, but there is absolutely no need. Aina frowned slightly, and just when she was about to ask Yayu why he was so confident, a strange aura instantly filled the small compartment. Ina couldn't help but tremble all over. The half-elf girl hugged herself tightly in confusion and looked around the room. What happened? Why did it suddenly become so cold? I am not a child who needs to be held in the palm of your hand and taken care of, Ina. The intoxicating voice rang softly in her ears, and Ina's eyes were involuntarily focused on Yayu. The gentle look on the other person's face made the girl intoxicated for a moment. What, how can this little bastard have such a gentle expression? It's almost like a foul. Muttering in her heart, when Ina reacted, she found that she was already lying in Yayu's arms, and the unpleasant chill disappeared at some point. What did you do? He blushed and wanted to push away Yayu who was holding him, but he felt resistance. Hey, I'm telling you not to mess around. There are many of my colleagues outside. Tilting his head slightly, not understanding what Ina was saying or blushing, Yayu placed one of his hands on the girl's forehead. Don't make trouble, feel it with your heart, it belongs to my power. After the words fell, Aina also stopped struggling. The girl looked a little surprised. This time she finally felt something unusual in the room. The power of the frost made her tremble involuntarily. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 57. The only thing that Ina remembers is that Hestia once said that Yayu's magic attribute is very high and he is suitable for taking the mage route. At that time, the half-elf girl didn't care much. High magic attributes did not mean that she would be able to take the mage route. If she couldn't understand magic, it would be meaningless no matter how high the magic attributes were. And if just one magic attribute is outstanding, it will mean that the early battle will be very difficult. In comparison, in the early stage, adventurers with outstanding strength attributes were more relaxed. You have understood magic? How come? Aina stared at Yayu with some confusion. She had never even experienced fighting, so why did she understand magic? Adventurers all grow up through battles. It would be really strange if they could become stronger without doing anything. It seems that I have been underestimated. I just can't meet the monsters. Yayu shrugged with a look of helplessness. As he spoke, the temperature in the compartment began to gradually recover. At this time, Aina, who realized that she was still lying in Yayu's arms, blushed and started pushing again. Okay, I already know that you can use magic, can you let me go now? After Yayu released Aina, the girl sat up straight, cleared her throat and put on a serious look. Now that you can use magic, magicians will face a huge problem in the early stage, which is the depletion of magic power. As a newcomer, you cannot cope with high-intensity combat. Once the magic power is depleted, it will be very dangerous. Therefore, it is very necessary to equip weapons to deal with weaker monsters, but why choose a longsword as an auxiliary weapon? Aina still couldn't figure out why Yayu was carrying a longsword. Whether it is a staff that can reduce consumption or a lightweight rapier or short knife, it is a good auxiliary weapon for Yayu. But Yayu, who had no choice among these, chose a long sword. Aina looked at Yayu, who was dressed in casual clothes, from head to toe, looking at no corner. Yayu couldn't help but feel a little strange when Aina stared at him so unceremoniously. Aina is not eating Yayu's tofu. What she was looking at was not Yayu's body, but the equipment he was wearing, but for the time being, she didn't seem to notice anything. Since it is equipped with weapons, why not be equipped with armor? Armor? There is no need for those things. Yayu shook his head, while Aina was slightly angry. How can you say that? A good suit of armor can save your life at a critical moment. Although I know it seems strange for a mage to wear armor, but anyway, you, a mage, are already carrying a sword on your back, so wearing armor is it's nothing more. Knowing that Yayu couldn't afford those expensive magic props belonging to the mage, and using them on the first few floors of the dungeon would be a bit fussy, Ina suggested that Yayu buy a suit of armor. Although it may seem a bit bulky, it is indeed something that suits Yayu very well. There is no need for this, and I don't have any spare money around me. Instead of buying armor or other armor, I might as well hire a supporter. Well, if you think so. Aina shook her head helplessly. Apparently she was used to her proposal being directly rejected by Yayu. But to a certain extent, a good supporter is more effective than armor. As long as the supporter can draw the monster's hatred, Yayu, as the mage, can easily attack. Thank you for your concern, Miss Aina. I think maybe I will be able to complete the task you assigned me a month ago tomorrow. Seeing Aina's helpless look, Yayu smiled softly and said this. I don't think you will just stay on the floors where goblins are infested. Aina had a look of distrust on her face and immediately stopped Yayu, who was about to turn around and leave. Don't leave in a hurry yet, just accept this. Yayu was slightly startled and turned around. What the girl slowly handed him was a slender protective gear. It takes the form of an attached gauntlet, approximately in length from wrist to elbow. Seeing its forged metal surface, you can tell it has the same function as a shield. Just like Ina's eyes in front of her, they were the same color as emerald. Just think of it as a reward for completing the task in advance, and use it well. Hey, this doesn't look good, does it? What? Are you unwilling to accept gifts from girls? That's not what I want to say is it really okay to make an exception like this and let others know about it? Yeah, you said with a chuckle while putting this wristband-like thing on his wrist. What? There are only two of us here. If you don't tell us, who will know? Aina muttered so quietly, showing a coquettish expression like a little girl. She looked at Yayu who was sitting in front of her and spoke seriously. I hope you accept it, not for me, but for yourself. Adventurers, you really never know when you will die. No matter how strong you think this person is, he will still leave as soon as he wants, just like a god's whim. I have seen too many adventurers who never come back. Well, I am really useless as a consultant. I can't help you Yayu at all. At least, this can be regarded as my little help. Aina, who was laughing and laughing, always looked at Yayu when she spoke. With her quiet eyes. I thought, Miss Ina would hate me. In response to the girl's sincere eyes, Yayu said this playfully. Ina, who had a gentle look on her face, suddenly had a slight blush on her cheeks. Accordingly, the girl began to stutter even when she spoke. Although Yayu, you are really annoying sometimes. For example, you don't listen to my instructions, you don't want to listen to my teachings, and you always do some dangerous things on your own. Things or something. But I am your adventurer advisor after all. How could I hate you? At the end of the sentence, the girl who was really shy and couldn't stand it lowered her head, not daring to look into Yayu's gentle black eyes. On the contrary, Yayu, don't you hate me a little? You hate such a verbose guy like me. No. Because I know that everything Aina does is for my sake. Yayu smiled like this and stood up. Besides, as the first person to enjoy such treatment, this is really flattering. I'm not the first one, I'm also very caring and responsible for the adventurers I received before. The girl shouted shyly, but Yayu had already opened the door and left. What a idiot. Looking at Yayu's leaving figure, Aina lowered her head and muttered to herself. So, please live well and don't take any more risks, Yayu. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 58. Lily just followed Yayu. For the first time, she felt that she had met a madman. Unlike other adventurers, after entering the dungeon, they hold their weapons carefully and are always aware of the dangers around them to keep themselves in the best fighting condition. But Yayu was different. Although he had a huge sword on his back and looked very powerful, he had no intention of using that sword at all. There was no sign of caution after entering the dungeon. He looked as if he was here for a trip or patrolling his own back garden. Before Lily could say a few words, Yayu led her down to the 5th floor. Master Yayu, wouldn't it be better for us to go slower? Even though he was walking in the maze on the 5th floor, Yayu's movements still did not slow down at all. Even Lily involuntarily slowed down and looked around nervously, fearing that a monster would suddenly emerge from the wall. Seeing that Yayu had walked a long distance away, Lily couldn't help but shout loudly at him. Just follow me closely, don't worry about the rest. There was a hint of impatience in Yayu's words. He thought he would encounter monsters soon after bringing his supporters, but to his disappointment, it was still exactly the same as before. Hey, I know. In desperation, Lily could only speed up her pace to follow. As she walked, the girl was thinking in her heart whether Yayu was an adventurer at LV2, that's why he was so indifferent. If it is really LV2, then you should be more honest. It is no joke if you are targeted by him. Maybe she often plays tricks in front of LV1 adventurers, but when facing LV2 adventurers, Lily has no idea or courage at all. Soon, the two of them went all the way down to the 9th floor. Although they were surprised why they never encountered monsters, the weird atmosphere made Lily more and more scared. Master Yayu, do you think you are a LV2 adventurer? Finally summoning up the courage to ask, Lily stared at Yayu with hopeful eyes. Well, me. It's just LV1. Yayu said so calmly that Lily couldn't help but twitch her eyes. LV1? LV1, you actually went down to the 9th floor with your head covered so silently. Should I say you are brave, or should I say you are lucky? Aren't you afraid that monsters will suddenly appear and attack you? Speaking of which, why haven't monsters appeared so far? It's really strange. Today's dungeon is really weird. Lily was thinking in such a mess, and Yayu also stopped. Forget it, let's forget it here, there's no point in continuing. Do you want to continue down? Do you want to go to the 13th floor where LV2 monsters are active? When Lily showed an expression of not knowing what to say, Yayu had already found a stone pillar and sat down against it. Well, we are really lucky. We actually came to the 9th floor without encountering a monster. This kind of thing is really incredible. Feeling that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Lily tried hard to find a topic. No. It's not our luck. However, Yayu shook his head and directly denied Lily's words. That's why. After being stunned for a moment, Lily tilted her head curiously. Whether it's a dungeon or a monster, they are all alive and alive. In this case, they will naturally be afraid. Fear. Yes, they are afraid, so they don't dare to show up. Ah, it turns out to be like this. Lily didn't know what to say. She stared at Yayu with strange eyes. You won't say that the thing they are afraid of is you, right? I have seen so many adventurers, but this is the first time I have seen a narcissistic guy like you. Isn't it okay to bring a supporter? It seems like we should go back and tell Hestia, maybe she has some solution. Come on, let's go back. After resting for a while, Yayu stood up and planned to return to the ground. I haven't encountered a single monster, so naturally I don't have a magic crystal. In this case, I haven't lost anything. Lily thought this as she followed Yayu. Under normal circumstances, the reward for a supporter is a certain proportion of the crystals dropped in the maze. This proportion is usually negotiated before entering the dungeon. Under normal circumstances, the allocated amount is 50%, but in fact, in the end, it was quite good for Lily to get an achievement in the hands of those adventurers. Most of the time, she couldn't even get the first level. Because of this, Lily didn't have a good impression of adventurers, and even put her thoughts on other things. For example, from the beginning to now, Lily's eyes have never left the big sword on Yayu's back, and at this time she finally found the opportunity to speak. Well, Master Yayu's weapons look very handsome. Did you say this? Yayu glanced at the sword behind him. Well, you can tell at first glance that it is a very powerful sword. Master Yayu must be an amazing swordsman, right? It's a pity that I didn't see him fighting. Swordsman? No. I'm a mage. Yayu answered so coldly that Lily couldn't say a word for a long time. Mage. My mind is a little confused. The mage uses such an inconvenient weapon? People who are proficient in swordsmanship generally cannot use weapons like long swords, right? As for a mage running into the dungeon carrying a long sword, it is even more surprising. If he's not brushing himself, that means this guy is a lunatic. Lily looked speechless, and at the same time she became even more sure that Yayu was a lunatic. Then, well, since Master Yayu is a mage, why doesn't he use a staff instead of a big sword like this as a weapon? Because there is no need, no matter how good the materials used to forge the staff, it will be too fragile and it will restrict me. Yayu said this, and Lily curled her lips again. What, here we go again, would you die if you weren't so narcissistic? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Shang. Chapter 59. When Yu walked out of the Adventurers Guild with the protective gear that Aina gave him, he realized the most critical thing. Although he said he wanted to find a supporter, Yue, who didn't know anything about this aspect, was a little embarrassed. Where should I go to find supporters? Do you mean just strike up a conversation on the street? I raised my head and saw that the sky was already dyed maroon, and it was almost dusk. You might as well ask Aina for advice tomorrow. She should know much more about this than herself. Thinking this way, Yu walked along the west street and stepped into several back alleys with complicated paths. At this moment, deep in the alley, there was a series of rapid footsteps. Just when Yu was curious about who was running, a small voice came out from around the corner and hit Yu hard. "Yeah!" Letting out a weak scream, the shadow immediately bounced outwards without any suspense, and then fell hard to the ground. Is this a small human race? Yu looked at the girl who fell in front of him with some curiosity. She had the body of a young girl and thin hands and feet that seemed to be broken at the touch of a touch. Seeing the unique shape with each part of the body being extremely small, he immediately thought of the name of a race. Not only that, the appearance of the girl in front of him and the big backpack she dropped on the ground also made Yu feel familiar. I seem to see this girl often at the entrance to the dungeon. Is she a supporter? I was just wondering where to look for a supporter, and one came to my doorstep. Sorry, are you okay? Yu stretched out his hand towards the girl who fell to the ground. The girl's small body twisted and stood up, her chestnut hair covering her neck. Looks young. Among all the small features, those round and big eyes left a strong impression. I caught you, damn Harem. Just when Yu was about to reach out to help her, a human appeared from the other end of the road. The explosive roar frightened the girl Palom, and she couldn't bear to see it. The man with the fierce eyes seemed to be an adventurer. He looked to be about 20 years old, and he was carrying a relatively large sword on his back. You can't escape. The panting young man showed a devilish expression and completely ignored Yu who was standing there. Of course, Yu obviously didn't pay attention to what he meant, and focused all his attention on the little human girl who fell to the ground. Are you a supporter? Ah, yes, I am. The girl was obviously frightened, but when Yu asked her this, she still answered subconsciously. That's great, can I hire you? Huh. The girl obviously had not yet reacted to the series of changes, and she stared in surprise at the man who had blocked her escape. What is going on with this guy? Is it natural that he appears so suddenly? While the girl was thinking foolishly, the male adventurer on the other side who was completely ignored also yelled angrily. Where did you come from? Don't get in the way. Get out of my way. Well, is this guy trouble? Yu, who heard the male's roar, glanced at him slightly and immediately asked the girl. Ah, his words. The hesitating girl didn't know how to answer, while Yu nodded to himself. If I help you solve it, can I reduce part of the employment fee? You guy, don't look down on others too much. Disappear immediately, or I will chop you down with the guy behind you. I don't know what happened, but I want to hire this supporter. I wonder if you can disappear temporarily. Yu spoke very politely to the male adventurer in front of him, but it was obvious that no one would feel happy after hearing what he said. Looking for death, if this is the case, I will kill you first. The man reached behind his back and drew his sword. Yu frowned slightly, it was no longer simple hostility, but real murderous intent. Both Hestia and Aina told Yu about the rules for adventurers. The most important point is that no matter what kind of serious conflict occurs, do not hurt your life. Killing other members of the clan is a heinous crime that will never be forgiven. But it was obvious that the man in front of him was not just talking about it, but he would actually kill Yayu directly if he had the chance. The next moment, the man rushed over in one breath. No one noticed that the stone bricks under Yayu's feet were covered with a light layer of white frost. Stop. The sudden drop in temperature returned to normal at this moment. Yayu was slightly startled, and the attacking man also stopped. Because a strong and stern voice intervened in this scene. Subconsciously, I turned around and saw an elf girl holding a big paper bag in one hand. The same overly perfect facial features as Ina. The difference from Ina, who is a half-elf, is that her sharp ears draw sharper lines. Sky blue almond-shaped eyes shot straight through the male adventurer. This girl, Yayu, is no stranger to her. She is a colleague of 11ER in the Mistress of Plenty. If her name is remembered correctly, it seems to be Lu. They appear one after another. What happened this time? The gentleman you intend to harm, he will become the lifelong partner of an important colleague of mine. You are not allowed to make a move against him. What is she talking about? What the hell are you talking about? Are you tired of living? Stop barking. The air froze with a sound. The yelling man stopped immediately, and Miss Lu, who narrowed her eyes, felt an unusual sense of oppression. His embarrassment was obvious. Yayu also felt this sense of oppression, which made Yayu couldn't help but feel a little curious. This elf girl who seemed to be just an ordinary waiter didn't seem to be simple. I don't want to be violent. I always hit too hard. With the twilight shining from the direction of the street on her back, Miss Lu said calmly. From her posture, there was a strong sense of reality that was unbelievable. The male adventurer's mouth was still opening and closing, as if giving an ultimatum, and with a sharp sound, Ms. Lu equipped a coda key in her free hand. Damn it! The man ran away with a livid face. Are you okay? It helped a lot. In response to Zuliu's concern, Yayu responded with a polite smile. After all, I don't know what LV level that guy is. I almost killed a LV5 guy with my subconscious power, and I don't know if this guy can withstand it. It would be very troublesome if he died, right? After all, frost like that would easily lead to someone identifying the murderer, which would cause Hestia a lot of trouble. It's just a piece of cake, and I believe Mr. Yayu can solve it easily. Lu bowed slightly and said so humbly, staring at Yayu's face with stern eyes, as if he could see through everything. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 60. Sneak away quietly? The girl who was watching Yayu and Lu talking was thinking so in her heart, and immediately wanted to leave here quietly. But at this moment, Yayu's hand reached over and quietly grabbed her hood. Promise, please don't forget it. Looking at Yayu's expressionless face, the girl nodded, slightly scared for some reason. Then, I will wait for you at the entrance of the dungeon tomorrow. I hope you won't make me wait. It was obviously a very gentle warning, but for some reason it sounded like a silent threat to the girl's ears. I understand, I will definitely come. And I helped you solve this problem, then. I know. 3 days of support is enough to repay you, right? As the girl said this, she muttered unhappily in her heart. What, does this guy need to be so stingy? After all, adventurers are all equally annoying. Listening to what the girl said, Yayu nodded with satisfaction, then let go of his hand and let the girl leave. Who is this girl? Looking at the little girl leaving here, Liu asked curiously. Well, I'm looking for a supporter, and I think she seems pretty good. Yayu said this, and Lu shook his head helplessly. Choosing a supporter is something that needs to be considered very carefully. It's not just about choosing whoever looks cute. Although that girl does look cute, but Things are not at all what you think. The reason why I chose her was just a coincidence. It just so happened that the girl seemed to have encountered some troubles. After helping her solve it, I can save some money. Isn't this more casual? Liu looked helpless. The girl wanted to say a lot, but for some reason she couldn't say anything after seeing Yayu's face. Forget it, Mr. Yayu's decision is not something I can interfere at will. I just hope that Mr. Yayu can be more cautious in this regard. After all, a good supporter in the dungeon is related to your survival probability. What if something unexpected happens to you, Sierra will be very sad. What did you mean by what you said at the beginning, Liu, me and 11ER? After hearing what the girl in front of him said at the beginning, Yayu asked with some concern. Do you want to end up giving up? Lu looked at Yayu calmly and asked such an oppressive question. That, I don't understand something. Yayu showed an incomprehensible look on his face. When did he start having sex and when did he abandon 11ER? I think, there is something that needs to be explained. The person I like is just Riveria. Yayu looked at Lu with a serious face and said this, as if asking you to understand me. I understand, but the two have nothing to do with each other. I only know that if you dare to make 11ER unhappy, I will not let you go. After giving Yayu a deep look and leaving such words, Lu turned around and left, leaving Yayu alone with an expression that didn't know what was going on. Seems angry. But, why exactly? Now that you have brought a supporter, you should be able to encounter monsters this time, right? The next morning, Yayu was thinking this while arranging his equipment. He carried the blade of Hestia on his back, and on his left arm was a protective gear that glowed the color of emerald. Yayu thought so and gently stroked the surface of the emerald-colored armor given to him by Ayana. If that still doesn't work, just explain it to Hestia honestly. Hestia, I'm going to the dungeon. Well, be careful. The girl who hadn't gotten up yet sank into the warm quilt, raised a hand and waved it and said lazily. That supporter girl shouldn't give up on herself, right? But she was pretty easy to recognize, and Yayu had the impression that he had seen her many times at the entrance to the dungeon. After all, a large backpack like that is very eye-catching. Take the path to the main street and head to the central square. Following the crowd of adventurers, Yayu came to the Tower of Babel. Yayu was not disappointed. At the entrance of the Tower of Babel, the girl carrying a backpack that was completely disproportionate to her body stood there. I'm really happy that I didn't break my promise. Yayu, who walked forward, said this, and the girl who seemed not to be in high spirits lowered her head and hummed softly. The girl didn't know what was going on with her. She didn't want to get involved, but somehow she came to the square early and stood here waiting. Why do you have to do such a troublesome thing? It's enough to hide for a few days. Why do you want to be his supporter and work for him for 3 days in vain? Hearing Yayu's words in the alley last night, the girl couldn't help but curl her lips. This was the first time I had seen such a stingy adventurer. Although those adventurers were broke, they could still say nice things before hiring me. If you want to fall out, you only fall out when the amount is distributed after the employment is over. How can there be a guy like him who deducts 3 days' salary from someone before the employment starts? Well, this adventurer, I will be your supporter from now on. Please give me your advice. Although she was very dissatisfied in her heart, the girl still showed enthusiasm on the surface. Let's go. Yayu nodded lightly and walked directly to the dungeon. It's so refreshing. Are you another idiot who only knows how to fight? But at least adventurers who only know how to fight should be a little easier to get along with, right? The girl thought so and quickly followed. Well, Adventurer Sama, don't you need to introduce yourself? My name is Lily Luca Erd. Adventurer Sama, how do you want people to call you? Can you just use your title? As for my name, just call me Yayu. Oh, Master Yayu. You don't need to add the word adult. For some reason, Yayu felt very uncomfortable hearing the girl yelling at each of the adults. How can I do that? For a humble and poor supporter like me, it would be really rude to address the adventurer Sama without using honorifics. The girl said so matter-of-factly, with a flattering fake smile on her face. Yayu, who had always been minding his own business, stared at the girl's face for a moment, then moved on without saying anything. I always feel like, there's something a little different about this guy. Lily, who was following Yayu, tilted her head slightly, and immediately followed her without thinking too much.